So today I'm going to talk to you about why and how educators can grow their entrepreneurial mindset. And just another thing to mention about my background, I'm currently an assistant professor at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. So as an overview for what I'm going to talk about, the first thing is just explaining what is the entrepreneurial mindset. Next, explaining how improving my own entrepreneurial mindset has benefited my teaching and my research. And then finally, providing some advice on how other faculty can benefit from developing their own entrepreneurial mindset. So first, what is the entrepreneurial mindset? We define the entrepreneurial mindset as the inclination to discover, evaluate, and exploit opportunities. And here it's important to note that the entrepreneurial mindset is not just about startups, but it's important for new product development or continuous improvement within a company or even one's personal life. So for people, discovering the entrepreneurial mindset is about moving away from the traditional notion of the obedient employee who simply does what they are told. And instead, it's more about employees or people asking questions and thinking more strategically about the why. And just to demonstrate this, I'm going to show a short, quick video, 2 minutes, just to show how this works with respect to engineers, but keep in mind it's applicable to all employees.
A growing number of universities, businesses, and authors are recognizing the need for the United States to produce engineers with an entrepreneurial mindset. With the help of Daniel and Alicia, two students who just graduated with engineering degrees, we'll look at what this mindset is and what it isn't. Daniel and Alicia received their degrees from a university that teaches traditional engineering, with an emphasis on problem solving and technical acumen. When they arrive at their new jobs, they receive the specifications and get straight to work. They apply the technical skills they acquired in college and even demonstrate some innovation, but that's where their engagement ends. Daniel and Alicia focused on the problem at hand and executed the task they were given, but they did not engage the company's customers or anticipate new market opportunities. Eventually, global competition eroded the company's market share until it was no longer profitable. Could an entrepreneurial mindset have led to a more positive outcome? This time, Daniel and Alicia began by asking questions. Recognizing the problem as an opportunity, they talked with customers about their needs. The answers make them reconsider the purpose of the new specifications. The feedback leads them to the realization that there are different markets. When they analyze societal and economic trends, it becomes clear that one market segment will grow. The specification handed to them is not the answer. Instead, they propose an alternate technology that better serves the growing market. In this process, Daniel and Alicia simultaneously evaluated the need, the market, societal trends, and technical feasibility. Now that they understand the full range of opportunities, Daniel and Alicia collaborate with each other and with colleagues to design a product that exceeds the specifications, achieves cost savings, and expands into new business opportunities. They exhibited the attributes of entrepreneurially minded engineers, helping their employer meet with commercial success.
So again, although that example used engineers, it's very much applicable to all disciplines and people from all backgrounds. So next I'll talk about how improving my own entrepreneurial mindset has benefited both my teaching and my research. The first thing I want to talk about is funding. So with respect to funding, the entrepreneurial mindset has helped me with getting access to commercialized funding. And I should provide a preface it here that I do research within the area of solar energy. So this helps me with respect to my solar energy research. I can apply for some internal funding, work with the NSF I-Corps, which has both the sites and national program. If you're not familiar with those, I highly recommend, as the sites program is available to most anybody in not only the university setting, but people surrounded by a university or access to a university. There's also the PFI, the Partnerships for Innovation, as well as the NSF, SBIR, and STTR, which is a small business innovation and research in the transfer of the research. But it also applies to education. So if you're not familiar with these three, I recommend looking into them. One is the Keen program, and that does focus on engineering. So that's the Kern Entrepreneurial Engineering Network. But there's also VentureWell, which is open to all disciplines, as well as the NSF education-focused proposals. Another way that I've benefited is through customer discovery. So with customer discovery, working with the NSF I-Core program, I've conducted over 260 interviews with potential customers, and I've been able to validate a value proposition. And with that, it's resulted in 2 startups, one what I call Solar Swami, which is related to solar energy performance modeling and preventative maintenance. And then the second one is a consulting business called STEM Empowerment Professionals. I've also benefited in my research. I've been able to write about the entrepreneurial mindset in books, as well as book chapters, conference proceedings, as well as journal publications. And when I think about the entrepreneurial mindset, and just to differentiate how it impacts me personally versus in a business setting, it really makes me think about the reader when it comes to journal publications. So when I publish, I'm publishing in the solar energy area, as well as integrating the entrepreneurial mindset into the classroom. So I'm just more cognizant about what the value is to the reader when it comes to those areas. Another area where I've benefited is with respect to networking and collaborations. So with respect to, I've listed here Titmon as well as the Indiana Electric Cooperatives and the CREATE program. That relates to my solar energy research and our commercialization efforts. But I've also been an invited speaker. Some of them are listed here, that I've been able to talk and work with faculty offering professional development or workshops related to the entrepreneurial mindset. But lastly, and I think most importantly, is this concept of the value proposition is always on my mind. And so whether it's in a business setting, working for my employer at the university, or in my personal life, I'm constantly thinking about what is the most valuable design, or what value is it that I can provide to others. Specific to these 3 areas, desirability, viability, and feasibility. So I'm constantly thinking with respect to desirability, do they want this? So when I think about working in a university, I think, does my employer see value in this? With respect to feasibility, can we do this? I can think about my own capabilities and think about what I have access to as resources and think, is this even an option to be completed? And then third, viability. Should we do this? Does it make business sense? So when I think about this in my personal life, when I think about return on investment, we're all very conscious of our time when it comes to work-life balance. So I think, is this worth it for me to spend my time on this? Now, I just explained this with respect to my personal life, but let's say you are working for a company or you have a startup. If you have a new product that you want to roll out, the questions work in the same way. So with respect to desirability, if you have a new product development, do people actually want this? Do customers actually want this? With respect to feasibility, can we do this? Perhaps from the manufacturing perspective, can this physically be built? And then finally, from a viability perspective, should we do this? Again, this comes down to business sense and doesn't make economic sense to move forward. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is how other faculty can benefit from developing their own entrepreneurial mindset. First, what are the benefits of developing the entrepreneurial mindset? It really comes down to 2 things. The first is you can add value to your company or your startup or your employer if you work for a university. And then second, you can add value to your personal life. And I'm going to explain this through a few different examples. The first example is just from an institutional perspective. So from an institutional perspective, this can include developing new programs, perhaps through offering new degrees, certificate programs, or even new professional development programs. Or it could be done by developing new programs to support the student experience, such as a mentorship program. But it's important to keep in mind that value can also be back-end process related. So perhaps through the deployment of new productivity software that might be happening at your institution, or as we've all kind of been relating to this over the past several months, to the potential implementation of a new COVID-19 testing process. Now, I hope my institution doesn't look like this come 3 or 4 weeks when school starts, but these are pictures of real life innovation that's happening within the local areas. With respect to your personal life, a great thing about the entrepreneurial mindset is you can apply it not only in the business setting, but also to your personal life. Developing the entrepreneurial mindset and thinking more strategically about your personal life could result in negotiating a lower price on a new car, or obtaining a better mortgage rate, or even creating a new job for yourself. So how exactly can we do this? And my advice, and this is for faculty, and I also share this with students, is that it comes down to 3 things. Identify values and beliefs, increase your capabilities, and build a supportive ecosystem. So first, when identifying your values and beliefs, ideally, these should be consistent across your day job and your personal life. But there are many cases where these may not be in alignment. For example, if you're transitioning from one career path to another. The first thing I recommend for anyone looking for a new approach or mindset is to establish the why, which can be documented through a personal mission statement. On this slide, I provide a Mad Libs type template on the left side and an example on the right side. But if you do a Google search, you can discover a variety of examples online. So on the left-hand side, we have a fill in the blank, and the colors directly correlate to the right-hand side. But there's 7 main things that we should pay attention to. First of all, the adjective that's important to your values, the title that you have, an adverb, what you do, a specific action, or 3 specific actions. So I'm just going to carefully read through this example. As a collaborative editor of creative fiction and nonfiction, I passionately guide writers to unearthing the unseen potential of their work through detail-oriented proofreading, unbiased and sincere feedback, an intuitive mental sonar device for your mistakes. So this isn't mine, this is an example that somebody else has provided. But about 5 years ago, I did create my own mission statement. And every once in a while, I go back to it and make modifications as I see fit. For me, it's really helped me when it comes to the 3 pillars of academia, the research, teaching, and service. And most importantly, it's really helped me when it comes to service. If you're anything like me, I get asked all the time to be on committees, to support task force, and to help out the institution in many different ways. And so what I often do when people ask me to collaborate or to start a new project is I look to my mission statement and I question, does this fit within my mission statement? And if not, then I politely and respectfully say no if I can. But if it does, then I think about that time and effort that it would take and consider doing it as long as it's in line with my mission statement. Then once you have that, just like companies do strategic planning, you can do strategic planning too. And so just like companies start with that mission and vision statement, and then they break it down into those measurable goals and targets, you can do the same thing. And so what I do is at the beginning of each year, sometimes at the beginning of each semester, I list out what I need to do to create that value and make sure that value fits not only in alignment with my mission, but I ensure that my mission fits in alignment with the university mission. Next is to increase your capabilities. Here I've identified 3 different ways to increase your capabilities. One is to increase your self-efficacy, the I know how to capability. It's increasing your resourcefulness so I can access how, or increasing your growth mindset, I can learn how. All 3 of these are very important when it comes to capabilities, because even if you don't know how, even if you don't have that self-efficacy, it's likely that you have access to maybe people or Google to get access to that resource, or that growth mindset and just knowing, working at it, you'll figure it out. So just as some examples, first with self-efficacy. So to increase your capabilities specific to self-efficacy, you may want to consider signing up for a free course through Udacity, Coursera, edX, or many of the other freely available MOOCs. I recommend Steve Blank's course on how to build a startup, but there's so many other great courses freely available through these portals. You could start to listen to podcasts. One of my favorites is Startup by Alex Bloomberg and Lisa Chow, or you can update your reading list. And the E-Myth is one I really connected to several years back. Next, with respect to resourceful, relative to resourcefulness, consider filling in a personal resource map, such as shown here, including access to external people. And then for places, if there are places that are left blank, this is a good indicator of where work needs to be done. I use this not only for myself, but also for my students to help them figure out, really hone in on what they have access to, but then really with that blank, if there are blank spaces, then it lets students know where work needs to be done. Finally, with the growth mindset, to increase your capabilities, you may want to consider doing the Strengths Finder or reading Carol Dweck's book, and then start changing your language by incorporating the power of yet. I hope with these 3 examples alone, you can see how they might not only benefit you as an instructor or faculty member, but I really hope that you may see some opportunities that you can incorporate these into the classroom. The third area is building a supportive ecosystem. There's 3 areas where I recommend to build that supportive ecosystem. First is with mentors. Second, by attending events. And then third, by joining different spaces. So first, with respect to mentoring. To build a supportive ecosystem specific to mentors, it's first important to acknowledge the many different types of mentors available. The notion of having one go-to guru for advice is long outdated. Instead, there are many different types of people you may seek out depending on the need. For example, there might be people that you go to for advice. You're not really sure what to do next or where to go, versus there might be some people that you go to for motivation. Maybe you just need a pat on the back, or you need somebody to help build up your self-esteem. Or there's some that you might go to for training, goal setting, support, coaching, direction, and success. And LinkedIn is a great place to seek out potential new mentors, because even if they're not connected to you, they could be connected to somebody through you. Next, events. Here I just show 2 events that last year were going on within the area close to Purdue where I'm at. So specific to events, participating in workshops and seminars is extremely beneficial for creating support through peers and resources in a community setting. And then last is the spaces. So specific to spaces, co-working spaces are a good option for creating a sense of belonging. And I've shown some examples here. Again, these are specific to the area that I'm at in Indiana, but a coffee shop, library, or other spaces could prove fruitful as well. So in summary, I've covered 3 areas. What is the entrepreneurial mindset? And that's the inclination to discover, evaluate, and exploit opportunities. I talked about how improving my own entrepreneurial mindset has benefited my teaching and research. And specifically, I called out some areas related to funding, publications, and collaborating and networking. And then finally, how other faculty can benefit from developing their own entrepreneurial mindset. And I highlighted 3 different ways. One is through value identification. Next is through capability development. And then the third one is through ecosystem cultivation. So that is it for what I have to share with you for today, which is the 29th. So feel free to follow up with me on any of these social media platforms. And please let me know if you're interested in collaborating or looking for facilitation of professional development workshops. Thank you. And now I think I'm going to answer some questions.
Thanks so much. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to add them to the chat. Again, you can find you can find access to the chat in the bottom toolbar of your Zoom window there. And we'll make sure to get those over to Dr. Bosman.
And if anybody would like access to a copy of these slides, you can feel free to email me. And so I'll just pop up that final screen one last time. And so you have my contact information. So if you'd like a copy of these slides, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll definitely get that out to you. But otherwise, it would be great to connect on any of these platforms and answer any questions that you might have. So there's a question about showing the funding sources. So I'm going to go back to that slide specifically. So some of the funding sources that I mentioned are shown here. One that I have received funding, or I'll talk about the ones that I have received funding through the NSF I-Corps site program. If you do a Google search, you can see that there's site programs throughout the United States, and these sites are hosted either by an institution or groups of academic institutions. So hopefully, no matter where you're at within the US, you should have access to one of these site programs. And they're a 5-week program that really take you through the customer discovery process. That is a precursor or prereq to the national program, which is a bit more intensive, a 7-week program. And then as a follow-up to that, then people will typically apply for the PFI, and then the next step is the SBIR. And so I'm currently in the process where I've done the site program and national program, and I'm currently working towards the PFI solicitation. With respect to education, Keen, if you're not familiar with them, you should reach out. They have a web portal or a website. I believe it's engineeringunleashed.com or .org. And Keen works with universities directly, and that's something that, and like I said, it's primarily for engineering programs, but Keen is something that you can look them up, and if you're interested in funding, you can contact them. VentureWell, I believe they currently have an RFP out. VentureWell is a unique organization in that not only do they work with faculty to increase innovation and entrepreneurial mindset into curriculum, but they also work directly with student teams. So if you have students that have an innovation, they should definitely check out the VentureWell opportunity. And then with NSF education, there's so many different options through the education route that it's just a matter of figuring out what might work best. An I-test solicitation is one that I can think of offhand, that there's opportunities to incorporate innovation or the entrepreneurial mindset into some of those funding proposals. I'm going to stop sharing and see if there's any other questions. So another question is, do you write your own proposals? And if so, and if you do, how much of your time do you spend doing that? At Purdue, because we're an R1 institution, there is the expectation to write proposals. And so on a typical year, this year, for example, I'll be submitting 4 large NSF National Science Foundation proposals, and I do the majority of writing on my own. I typically do the first draft, and then I work with my collaborators to do editing. And then of course we have the sponsored programs that provides a great deal of support just in getting all the documents together. So the quantity of time that I spend, if I had to estimate per proposal, I like to do things in advance. So I usually like to start a month in advance, but I don't spend a full month on it. But if I had to estimate, maybe 20 to 40 hours, depending on the proposal. This year, fortunately, I have a resubmit. I don't know if that's fortunate because that means it was rejected the first time, but doing resubmissions are much quicker. Any additional questions? How much teaching do you do if you're writing a lot of proposals? That's a great question. So with Purdue being predominantly a research institution, I teach one class each semester. But I should point out that in a previous job, maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago, my previous employer was the College of Menominee Nation, which is a small tribal college in northern Wisconsin. And that was primarily a teaching institution where I was teaching 5 courses each semester. So for those of you out there that are doing a lot of teaching, I can definitely relate. But even when I was there, I was writing a great amount of grant proposals. And so for me, it's different. Like that's what I value, and that was part of my mission, is to get those things done. It was a bit of a burnout, so I don't recommend that for everybody. But it's just something, if it's up your sleeve and you're interested in it, I highly recommend. I see a question for graduate students starting out in research and approaching graduation. Do you have any suggestions for interest towards faculty roles and professorships? So for me, when I attended grad school as a master's student, the PhD was in research was nowhere on my mind. And it wasn't until I had an opportunity to teach and get in front of the classroom that I really understood the value of it. So what I would suggest is, if grad students, even if they're interested in research, that I would recommend they get some practice teaching, because that's typically required of most faculty roles or professorships. So even if students can't teach on their own, even if they could co-teach with you, I think that would be of great value for them, just so they can understand what that's like in a real world situation. There's another question. Can you elaborate a bit more on the personal resources chart? So with that chart, it's a personal resources map, and I'm just going to do a quick screen share to bring that up again. So what I really love about that personal resource map, and I've also used this not only for my own resources, but also for mentoring. And so, let's just jump ahead. The great thing about this is really when you can highlight those white spaces. And by documenting it and listing out in the upper right-hand corner, there's the intrinsic. So here is where you list like your values, your passions, your talents. What is it that you have internally to offer? In the bottom right-hand corner is the extrinsic. So it's what people do you have access to? What education or training do you have access to? Your environment and capital and funds. On the left-hand side, bottom left, is materials. So finances, time, energy, management, support. And so what I really love about this is it's an opportunity to reflect. I think sometimes, especially students, but quite often faculty as well, it's a great way to check in and see, what do you have access to, but more importantly, what don't you have access to? And then it provides you an opportunity to seek out those potential interactions or potential resources. And so I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over, Natalie.
Thanks so much, Dr. Bosman. Really appreciate you sharing all of that with us today. And thank you so much, everyone who joined in, and for all the great questions. We hope to see you in a future session later this week. Thanks so much. Thanks again, Dr. Bosman. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.